time inconsistency and macroeconomic policy. So I'll give you one example first before I get deep into this particular concept. So suppose you are studying under me and I gave you a date for an exam and you learn the concepts. And when the date arrives, you have already studied for it, you've made notes, everything. I'll say, fine, there is no need for an exam because you've already studied for it and that is what I wanted, right? But the point is, you guys are too smart. You will understand that this teacher is not going to take an exam. So if he announces an exam, there is a high probability that he will not take it, right? So you will stop studying for the exam. You will make, you will start making an expectations of what happened earlier. So if I have a discretion of taking an exam or not taking an exam, then you are seeing this, that it is the possibility that you will not study. Maybe you will not study because you think that he might not take up the exam. He's just announcing the exam, he will not take up the exam. And I'm also better off because I do not have to grade you. I do not have to check papers. Well, but in case if I made it a rule that if I have announced the exam, I will be taking it up, then you are forced to study. And you also know this, that if he has announced it, he will be taking it up. So you will be studying. Ultimately, you will be studying, right? So in a way, what has happened is that rules are better than discretion. So we made a rule that once the exam is announced, it will be there. I mean, there is no discretion about it. That, okay, fine, we will take it, we won't take it. No, nothing like that. We will take it. That is there. So because of that, you will also study. This thing we are going to talk about in terms of expectations augmented Phillips curve. And here the time inconsistency comes, right? So government follows a certain policy rule, right? A certain policy rule. I'll give an example. And people, they start making their decisions, their commitments based on that the government is going to continue to do the same policy, whatever government is announced. But later on, government might change its rule because government has a discretion of doing it, that since society has already benefited, people have already worked on the expectations of what we have, what we will, that we'll be following the rule. Fair enough. So society will benefit in case if we're going to change the policy. So this incentive, when the government has changed or deviated from the announced policy rule, when the other player has already made the decision. So I'm the government, you guys are the society. I have announced certain rule. You made the decisions based on that rule. Now I'm changing it. That is what time inconsistency is. And I'll be giving you an example of the expectations augmented Phillips curve out here. But before than that, let me write about the time inconsistency. So please write time inconsistency. It refers to the following idea. One, the government has a policy rule. The people make commitments based on the continuation based on the continuation of the policy. And later government can say, fine, we are changing because the government can benefit the society by changing the policy. It also knows this, that the society has already taken commitments based on the continuation of the policy rule. And this is what is called the time inconsistency. Later, the government can benefit the society by changing its policy rule. Taking advantage of the commitments made by the people. So this is what the idea is, right? This is what the idea is. So this incentive that you are deviating from your announced policy, once the other player has already made the moves, once the other player has already made his choices, this is called the time inconsistency of the policy. This is called the time inconsistency of the policy, right? So suppose we have the expectations augmented Phillips curve. So we have pi t equals to pi et plus your mu plus z minus alpha ut. This we have taken it from Blanchard, your Phillips curve. Mu is the monopoly markup, z is the catch-all variable. He has taken z as the unemployment benefits. Alpha is any constant, ut is the unemployment rate, right? And later on, we have also written it like this. So I'm not actually getting into the much details about this. I mean, I'm not trying to prove this, that how do we move from this point to this point. And he has also assumed this, that say pi et is also equal to pi t minus 1 is equal to minus alpha ut minus u. So this is the change in the inflation rate, and this is the change or the deviation in unemployment from the natural level of unemployment. Alpha is greater than 0, right? So if we are given with pi t and this guy, so the relationship between pi and u is negative, right? So that is what the short-run Phillips curve is. The relationship between inflation and unemployment is negative. So if unemployment is rising, it means that people are losing jobs. They don't have employment. They don't have income. Their demand is going to be less. When the demand is going to be less, prices are going to fall. Inflation is going to be less. So the relationship between pi and u is negative. And that is what the short-run Phillips curve is. When you include this pi et term also, it becomes the expectations augmented Phillips curve. So your Phillips curve is drawn in the unemployment and the inflation space. Unemployment on the x-axis and inflation on the y-axis. So if there is a change in inflation or change in unemployment, that is the movement along the curve. But if there is a change in the expected inflation, that is the shift in the curve. So anything apart from inflation or unemployment, if that is going to change, that will be the shift in the curve. So when the inflation expectations are going to increase or decrease, these are going to shift the short-term Phillips curve, right? And the other thing is that in long run, since U is equal to UN, your Phillips curve is vertical, right? That's a vertical Phillips curve, right? Okay. Now, suppose, again, coming back to time inconsistency thing. Suppose government says this, that we want less than natural level of unemployment, right? We want less than natural level of unemployment. So if you have less than natural level of unemployment, so it means if your UT is going to be less than UN beta. So this guy is going to be negative. This is negative. Negative into negative is what? Positive. So it means what? Pi t minus 1 is going to be greater than 0. That means what? Pi t is going to be greater than pi t minus 1. So if the government wants that unemployment to be less than the natural level of unemployment, inflation is more than the last year's inflation, or inflation is going to be higher, right? So government is saying that we want unemployment to be below the natural level of unemployment, even if it is coming at the expense of the higher inflation, right? On the other hand, people, they have a certain expectations of inflation, right? So they will be expecting inflation to be something, society, people. So government has the discretion that it can set the policy, right? Whatever policy it wants to set, that this is going to be the inflation, this is the policy rule which they can set, that has a discretion. Government has a discretion of that, right? Now, what is government wanting? Government is wanting unemployment to be less than natural level of unemployment. But when can unemployment be less than natural level of unemployment? Huh? When more people will be employed, then only unemployment would be lesser. When is the case going to be when more people will be employed? When more output will be produced. When is more output will be produced? Say government follows expansionary monetary policy. Just imagine your LM curve going out. So when government follows expansionary monetary policy, what is going to happen? Output is going to increase, right? Output will be increasing. Government is going to set the higher, or is going to set the expansionary monetary policy. The moment this is going to happen, unemployment is going to fall. Unemployment is going to fall, your inflation is going to rise, right? And economy is going to move up against the Phillips curve, up along the Phillips curve, right? So if earlier I was here at UN, now I am here, right? So I was earlier here at this point, now I'm here at this point. Guys, are you following me? I'll be writing these things. But the point is this: if government wants unemployment to be less than the natural level of unemployment, right? Government is following expansionary monetary policy. Remember this. Your LM curve. This is the LM curve. It is drawn in interest rate and output space. So government is going to follow the expansionary monetary policy. What is going to happen? So at the given interest rate, your output is going to be more. Earlier output was this, now output is this. Earlier output was this, now output is this. When output is going to be more, employment is going to be more, unemployment is going to be less. So earlier, let's say I was sitting here, now I'm sitting here in terms of unemployment. Inflation. So earlier I was sitting here on the Phillips curve. Now this is the point at which I'm going to be sitting here, the Phillips curve. So I'm moving here at this point. So this is going to be the inflation, right? This is what inflation is. So I'll be sitting with higher inflation. So don't you think that the people are going to realize this, that um, government is doing such a thing? Government has announced a certain kind of inflation, but ultimately inflation is little more than that. People will start setting the expectation like that. People will start increasing their expectations of inflation also. And the moment people will start increasing their expectations of inflation, what is going to happen is that the Phillips curve is going to go up. Phillips curve is going to be shifted upward. So earlier this was the earlier short-run Phillips curve. Now this is the another or the higher short-run Phillips curve. You understand the linkages. So what is going to happen? That ultimately economy is, because when the inflation is going to be higher, demand is going to be lesser. When demand is going to be lesser, employment is going to be, output is going to be lesser. When output is going to be lesser, employment is going to be lesser. When employment is going to be lesser, unemployment is going to be more. Economy will move back to the natural level of unemployment. Economy will move back to the natural level of unemployment. So inflation is much higher. Although you are back at the natural level of unemployment, but inflation is higher, right? Inflation is higher. So the overall effect of the discretionary monetary policy is negative. There was a discretion now that you want to set unemployment less than the natural level of unemployment, right? So, and for that you sort of expanded the monetary policy. I mean, you have used the expansionary monetary policy. For that, the output has increased, right? Which has reduced the employment, but the inflation has increased. People have revised their expectations. Phillips curve has gone up. Now, what has happened is you are back at the same level of unemployment, but at the higher inflation. So the point is the overall effect of the discretionary monetary policy is negative. Why we are saying negative? We are saying negative because you are moving back to the same level of natural level of unemployment, but at the higher inflation. This is not what you wanted. You, in fact, wanted that unemployment to be lesser at the same inflation rate, at the same inflation. But don't you think that in case if the government would have followed rules instead of discretion, it would have been better? So that is what I want to say. Rules are better than discretion, right? So if the government would have said that fine, we'll be following this rule, that this is going to be the inflation. So we will maintain the inflation of pi 1. So economy would be sitting at this particular point, but this is better now. This point is better as compared to this particular point, because at this point you are at the same level of natural level of unemployment, and at this point the same level of natural level of unemployment is with higher inflation. So definitely this point is better than this. So if government, instead of following the discretionary monetary policy, if it would have followed the the rules-based policy, right? Rules are better than discretion, then economy would have ended up at the lower inflation and the same level of natural level of unemployment, right? I just want to quickly do it once more so that you understand what I'm trying to say. Do you have the unemployment level, unemployment rate? This is the inflation rate. This is what my short run Phillips curve one is. This is what my long run Phillips curve. And this is what my natural level of unemployment is. This is what pi 1 is. So although government has announced that it wants to maintain pi 1 level of inflation, but government, let's say, wants to have the unemployment rate even less than UN here. So if government wants to have lesser unemployment, it will have to increase employment. How? Why? When will employment increase? When output is going to increase. How output is increasing? By expansionary monetary policy, right? But when output is increasing, demand is increasing, prices are rising. So beta, at the lower level of unemployment, right, you are coming with the higher inflation. No. You're coming with higher inflation here. So that is the movement along the Phillips curve from this point to this point. But people understand that government has said that inflation is going to be pi 1, but it is not committed to it. It has used its discretion, and government has ended up at the higher inflation. So people will start expecting inflation to be higher. The moment expected inflation is going to increase, what is going to happen is that the short-run Phillips curve is going to shift upwards. The moment short-run Phillips curve is going to shift upward, the economy is going to come back to the natural level of unemployment, but at the higher inflation. So don't you think when government is following the discretionary monetary policy, it is going away from its rule? Its rule was that it will maintain this pi 1. But government has ended up using the discretionary monetary policy or have used discretion instead of its own rule. It has led what all of this has led to is increase in inflation, right? And the same unemployment. So it's a negative thing, right? But if government would have followed the rule, right, then inflation would have been pi 1 and unemployment is UN. So you tell, is pi 1 UN better or pi 2 UN better? Pi 1 UN is better. Same unemployment with lower inflation is better. Na? So rules are better than discretion. So that's an idea of all the story, right? So now, tomorrow we are going to move into how can government improve its credibility. So whatever government says, people believe that yes, it is going to follow this policy rule, the credibility of the policy, right? Thank you, Beta.